I'm Evelyn. I'm 33 years old. And 3 months ago, I discovered that the two people I trusted most, my brother and my husband, were plotting something unthinkable. They tried to get me drunk. Not for fun, not for celebration, but to forge my signature on legal documents tied to my inheritance. Before I continue, let me know in the comments what part of the world you're watching from. Also subscribe, because another story drops tomorrow. My life hadn't been perfect, but I thought I'd built something real. My husband David and I had been married for 5 years. He was charming, charismatic, and every bit the supportive partner in public. My older brother Ryan was the golden child in our family. He always had a way of making trouble look like leadership. The two of them got along far too well. That should have been my first red flag. But back then, I thought it was sweet, how my brother and husband bonded over poker nights and football games. My parents passed away 2 years ago in a car accident. They left behind an estate worth just over $2.4 million. Most of it was tied up in land, but I was the sole beneficiary. Ryan got nothing. Not because I asked for it that way, but because Mom and Dad knew Ryan's pattern. Every time he got a windfall, it vanished into luxury cars and get-rich-quick schemes. So they trusted me. Said I'd know how to make the money grow, not disappear. I set up a plan to hold on to the land for 5 years before selling. I was going to turn it into a sustainable housing project, a vision Mom had before she passed. But Ryan, he saw it as a waste. "You could cash out now and live like royalty," he said one night. And David, my husband, chimed in with his usual grin. "He's got a point, Cam. You work too hard not to enjoy a slice of the pie." I laughed it off then. I didn't know it was the start of something sinister. It began subtly. Ryan started dropping by more often, always bringing drinks. Whiskey, wine, even high-end tequila I'd once said I liked. David encouraged me to relax more, said I was always on edge. "You're too intense, babe. Just loosen up a little. Let things flow." I didn't drink often, and they knew it. So when they started pushing harder, insisting I join them, I got suspicious. One night, I pretended to take a few sips. I excused myself halfway through and dumped the rest in the sink. When I came back, they were talking in hushed tones. As soon as they saw me, they switched topics. That was the night I knew something was off. And then I found the envelope, tucked behind a pile of magazines on David's side of the dresser. Inside were photocopies of my signature, dozens of them, some traced, some smudged, some that looked exactly like the one on my will. I didn't confront him, not yet. Instead, I called an old friend from law school, Tasha. She'd gone into forensic document analysis. I asked if she could run some tests without anyone knowing. Within a week, she confirmed my fear. Someone had scanned my signature and was trying to recreate it with high-end printing equipment. They weren't just forging a signature. They were planning to commit fraud. And the scariest part? Yes. They were close to pulling it off. I played along for the next few weeks. Pretended I was loosening up. Pretended the drinks were working. Pretended I was starting to see things their way. David grew bolder. Ryan more reckless. They left documents out, thinking I wouldn't notice. One morning, I found a draft of a transfer deed. It showed my signature at the bottom. Faint, but there. They were trying to take the land. The plan was to sell it under my name, without me knowing, then split the proceeds. I didn't cry. I didn't scream. I recorded everything. I hid cameras in the living room, in the study, and even one in the liquor cabinet. I saved every whisper, every toast, every smug look. But I wasn't done. I had one move left. The night it happened, I set the stage myself. I cooked dinner, set the table, poured the wine. Except I swapped the bottles. What they thought was high-end Merlot was grape juice. What I drank looked identical, but mine was water with food coloring. I let them talk, let them smile, let them celebrate the deal that was about to go through. They handed me the papers. David handed me a pen. "Evelyn, you're making the right choice," he said. Ryan added, "This is gonna set us all up for life." I looked at the papers, then looked at them, and I smiled. "Sure," I said. "Let's do this." I picked up the pen, then I placed it down, and reached for the remote instead. David frowned. "What are you doing?" "Cly." I pressed play. The TV came to life. The footage from the hidden camera lit up the screen. Their faces, their words, their betrayal every second of their plotting. Ryan lunged for the remote. David shouted my name. But it was too late. I'd already sent copies to my lawyer, to Tasha, to the police. I stood up slowly. You tried to steal from me, I said. You drugged me, forged my signature. And you thought I wouldn't notice? David tried to plead. Said it was just an idea. Said they hadn't done anything yet. But I showed them the copies of the fake deed. The recordings. The receipts from the printing shop they'd used. Ryan bolted. David just slumped in his chair, stunned. I didn't shout. I didn't throw anything. I simply walked to the door. I already called a cab, I told them. You'll be hearing from my lawyer. And then, without another word, I left. The cab driver didn't say a word when I climbed in. I must have looked like a ghost, stone-faced, holding a manila folder full of betrayal. He drove me to my friend Tasha's house. She had insisted I stay with her for a while. Until you figure out the next move, she said. I hadn't figured anything out, but I knew I couldn't go back home. Not to that house. Not to the place where my husband and my own brother planned to strip away everything I'd built. Tasha poured me a cup of chamomile tea, even though I hadn't asked for it. She always knew what I needed before I did. They're going to try to flip it on you, she warned. Say you were drunk. Say you misunderstood. I nodded slowly. I know. She reached for the folder in my lap. Let's go through it again. We reviewed every screenshot from the hidden cameras. Every video clip. Every time-stamped whisper. There was one that stood out. Ryan saying, "She's got no clue. Once she signs, we wire it and vanish." That was my smoking gun. And David, he'd said, "Don't worry, she always blanks out after 2 glasses. She won't even remember." Tasha looked up from the transcript and shook her head. That's enough to take this to court. I took a deep breath. I don't want court, unless I have to. What do you want? I want them exposed. That night, I didn't sleep. I lay on the pull-out couch in Tasha's guest room, eyes open, heart burning. By morning, I had a plan. Step 1, secure my assets. I called my financial advisor, Naomi, and told her everything. She didn't even hesitate. Evelyn, we'll freeze the property and flag any attempt at transfer. No transaction can go through unless you appear in person with ID. Next, I updated my will. Removed David. Removed Ryan. Added an instruction that if anything ever happened to me under suspicious circumstances, all video files and evidence be forwarded to the authorities and the press. It might have been paranoid, but I wasn't taking chances anymore. Step 2. I filed a police report. Not to press charges yet, but to have a legal record. The detective, a woman named Rivera, listened carefully. You're saying they tried to drug you? I nodded. Repeatedly, over weeks. She asked if I had proof. I showed her the videos. She raised her eyebrows, then said quietly, You're lucky. Most victims don't catch it in time. I was more angry than lucky. And I hadn't caught it in time. Not the emotional damage, not the erosion of trust. But I had caught it before the paperwork went through. And that mattered. Step 3. I confronted them both, publicly. At the time, Ryan was still working at a startup tech firm. David was a manager at a boutique real estate firm with a spotless reputation. Both cared deeply about appearances. So I arranged a little meeting. It happened at my lawyer's office. Neutral ground. David showed up in a suit, trying to look polished. Ryan came in casual, cocky as ever. He winked at me as he sat down. Look who's suddenly a drama queen. I didn't respond. I simply pressed play on the video. Again, this time, with the lawyer watching. David went pale. Ryan's smirk melted into something brittle and sour. When the video ended, I spoke clearly. You've both violated multiple state and federal laws. They started talking over each other. It was a joke. We never followed through. We didn't forge anything. You drank with us, remember? I held up my hand. I drank water with food coloring. You drank the real thing. I pulled out the toxicology report I'd ordered the night after the stage dinner. Clean. 0 alcohol. Then I dropped the second document. A cease and desist, prepared by my lawyer. If either of you contacts me again, directly or indirectly, you will be sued. David's voice cracked. Evelyn, please, we can talk. No. I looked at him the way you'd look at something you once loved, now unrecognizable. I don't negotiate with thieves, Ryan scoffed. What? You think you're some kind of hero now? I leaned in slightly. No, I'm just done being your target. They left the office without another word, but I wasn't finished. Not yet. Step 4. I told the truth. I didn't do it on social media. I didn't blast their names. But I did reach out to mutual friends and family, quietly, privately. I sent them the evidence, let them see what happened. I didn't spin it, I didn't rant, I just said this is what was done to me. I thought you should know. Some people didn't respond at all. Some replied with disbelief. But a few? They stood by me, said they always felt something was off. One of my cousins said, I saw Ryan treating you like an ATM for years. Another friend said, David once joked that you were worth more on paper than in person. I thought it was weird. Now I get it. The damage was spreading, but this time, it wasn't mine to carry. It belonged to them. And then came the email. David, begging. He wrote, I messed up. I got greedy. I love you, Evelyn. Please, let's talk. I stared at the blinking cursor. Then, I deleted it. No reply. No second chance. And that night, I finally slept. Really slept. No fear, no dread, just silence. And the beginning of peace. The following morning, I woke up to a knock on the door. It wasn't aggressive, just steady, rhythmic. Tasha peeked through the window first, then turned to me. It's your brother. I didn't move. I didn't answer. But I watched from the hallway as he stood there, holding a paper bag. He looked rough, hair unkempt, eyes bloodshot, shoulders sagging. When he realized no one was coming, he left the bag on the porch, then walked away without looking back. Inside the bag was a bottle of wine, the same brand he once used to try and sedate me, along with a handwritten note. Guess you were never as dumb as we thought. Ryan. That sentence sat in my gut like a stone. I threw the bottle straight into the trash. But I kept the note. Evidence. Reminder. Motivation. The next few days were quiet. Too quiet. David hadn't reached out again. Ryan disappeared from social media. And part of me worried the calm was just the eye of the storm. So I stayed alert. Careful. Methodical. I installed cameras around my condo, changed my number, alerted my bank to flag any unusual activity. But then, something unexpected happened. Naomi, my financial advisor, called. Evelyn, did you authorize a lien on the property? I froze. No. She exhaled sharply. I thought so. Someone tried filing a fake lien using your old signature, the forged one. She paused. They submitted it from an IP address traced to Ryan's neighborhood. My jaw clenched. They were still trying. Even after being caught. Even after the evidence. Even after the confrontation. They were still trying to take what wasn't theirs. That night, I sat at Tasha's kitchen table for hours. Not crying, not panicking, planning. Do you want to press charges now? Tasha asked gently. I nodded. Yes, and I want to make sure it sticks. She pulled out her laptop and started typing. We'll add the lien attempt to the file. That pushes it into a whole new category. Attempted real estate fraud. Detective Rivera was ready when I called. We were waiting for your go-ahead, she said. We already have statements, footage, forgery evidence, and now a digital paper trail. It's solid. The next morning, a warrant was issued for Ryan's arrest, and a restraining order against David was granted. I didn't attend the arrest. But Tasha got a tip from a friend on the force. They picked Ryan up at his apartment. He was barefoot, hungover, and swearing the whole time that he was being set up. 2 days later, David was served at his office. His company suspended him pending investigation, and his face, once proudly displayed on their top closers of the year wall, was taken down quietly. The ripple effects had begun. But I wasn't celebrating. There was no joy in watching people I once loved fall. Only relief. Only validation. A week later, I received a certified letter from Ryan's lawyer. It was a laughable attempt, a cease and desist accusing me of slander and malicious defamation. Tasha read it and rolled her eyes. "This has no teeth." I responded with my own letter, attaching the evidence package, and a personal statement. I never lied. I never twisted. I simply told the truth. And the truth, apparently, is your biggest enemy. We heard nothing after that. David, on the other hand, tried again. He sent flowers to Tasha's house. No card. Just lilies. My favorite. I didn't even touch them. Tasha threw them out before I had the chance. "You're not entertaining that," she said. And she was right. Because by then, I'd already made my next move. I hired a new lawyer. Not for criminal charges. For civil action. Restitution. The land was safe. My accounts secure. But I wanted something more. I wanted a precedent. Something that said, you don't get to violate a woman's trust and walk away untouched. The lawsuit was filed under fraud, attempted coercion, and emotional damages. David and Ryan would have to respond or lose by default. And suddenly, I started receiving messages. From people I hadn't spoken to in years, an old college friend said, "I heard what happened. I just want you to know you're incredible." My aunt messaged, "Your mom would have been proud of how you handled this." But the most surprising message came from my cousin Rachel. We'd never been close. Always on opposite sides at family reunions. She said, "Evelyn, Ryan did the same thing to me 2 years ago. Tried to talk me into signing over a piece of land. Grandma left me. I didn't have the courage to fight him then. But watching you do this, it gave me mine." That was the moment I realized. This wasn't just about me. It was about breaking a cycle, calling out the behavior no one else dared to touch. And even though it cost me so much, my marriage, my relationship with my brother, my peace, I'd do it again. Because silence protects the guilty. But truth? Truth sets people free. Even if it hurts at first. 2 weeks after the civil suit was filed, I got a call from Detective Rivera. "Ryan's out on bail," she said. My heart skipped, but not from fear. I'd expected it. "What's next?" I asked. "He's been ordered to stay away from you, but he's hired a defense team. They're pushing for a deal." "A deal?" "They want to avoid trial." I let that sink in. Ryan, the guy who used to laugh at the law, now scrambling to make this disappear. "Tell them no deal unless it includes a guilty plea." Rivera paused. "I figured you'd say that." She respected me more now, not just as a witness, but as someone who refused to be intimidated. David, on the other hand, had gone quiet. Too quiet. His social media vanished. His job terminated him officially after internal review. I later heard through the grapevine that his name was flagged in a regional fraud database. He'd never sell real estate again. I should have felt victorious. Instead, I felt finished. Like the storm had passed, and now I was left with the broken pieces. But I wasn't alone. Tasha was still there. Naomi checked in weekly. Rachel and I started talking more, realizing we had more in common than just blood. And then one day, out of the blue, my lawyer called. "You've got mail," she said. I frowned. "Like actual mail?" "Certified. From a real estate investor in upstate New York." I picked it up that afternoon. Inside was a letter and a proposal. Turns out, one of the early proposals I made for the land, before the betrayal, had quietly circulated. This investor had come across it and wanted to collaborate. They loved the sustainable housing concept, said it aligned with their upcoming green initiative. They offered to partner, not buy me out, to help bring my mother's vision to life. I read the proposal 3 times before believing it was real. I'd almost forgotten why I started this, why I held on so tightly to that land. Because it wasn't just property. It was legacy, a future built on something real. That night, I went back to the property for the first time in months. Alone. I stood at the edge of the field as the wind rustled the tall grass. The sky turned gold with sunset, and I swear I could hear my mother's voice. "You did the right thing, Evelyn. You didn't let them ruin it." A single tear slipped on my cheek, but this time, it wasn't from pain. It was release. I signed the preliminary agreement the next day. Tasha popped champagne in the kitchen. Real champagne this time. "From trauma to triumph," she toasted. I smiled, raising my glass, to never ignoring my gut again. But the story wasn't over. Because then came court. Ryan tried everything. His lawyers pushed for delays, questioned the authenticity of the recordings, tried to claim entrapment. But the judge wasn't swayed. The video evidence was airtight. The digital trail from the forged lien attempt was damning. And when the DA brought up his history with other family members, that sealed it. 3 women, including Rachel, came forward during the hearings. Each had their own version of manipulation, pressure, and near-signing incidents. He wasn't just a bad brother, he was a repeat offender. David, sensing the net closing, agreed to a settlement. He paid restitution, more than the law required, probably to avoid more criminal exposure. The civil case against him was dropped in exchange for full payment and a sworn affidavit. I didn't care about the money, I cared about the record, the truth on paper. And I got it. As for Ryan, he took a plea deal. 3 years probation, mandatory financial ethics counseling, no ability to act as an agent or representative in real estate or legal transactions. He cried when the sentence was read, said he never meant to hurt me, but I didn't cry. I didn't even blink. Because I'd spent years crying behind closed doors while everyone told me to forgive and forget. No more. That night, I slept with the windows open, the breeze soft, the air clean, and for the first time in what felt like forever, I felt safe. Not just physically, but emotionally, secure in my own power, and proud of what I'd done. Not just for me, but for every woman who's ever been told, don't make a big deal. Because sometimes you have to make a huge deal just to survive. 3 months later, I was standing in the middle of that same field. But this time, I wasn't alone. Construction markers dotted the soil. Engineers walked the perimeter with clipboards. Surveyors mapped the terrain. The land was finally alive with purpose. And I was the one steering the vision. The investor partnership had gone through without a hitch. We formed a joint venture under my name, Legacy Grove Housing Initiative, named after my mother's dream, and the grove of cedar trees she once loved to picnic under. I wasn't just signing off on the project. I was leading it. Design meetings, community outreach, sustainability compliance. It was exhausting. But this time, the exhaustion was mine to own. Not stolen, not manipulated. Mine. And one afternoon, after a long call with our architects, I got a surprise visitor. Tasha buzzed up from the gate. She came bearing lattes and a manila envelope. "What's this?" I asked. She grinned. "Closure." Inside the envelope was a document. A notice from the court. David had completed his restitution payments. The case was closed. He was free to move on. But more importantly, so was I. I exhaled slowly and folded the paper. That chapter was finally over. Later that night, I lit a small fire in the backyard fire pit. Not out of spite, but to release what needed to go. I tossed in the old wine note from Ryan, some printed emails from David, a worn-out photo of the 3 of us, me in the middle, arms around them. By the time the flames died, I felt lighter, like I'd burned away the last of their hold on me. The following week, I did something bold. I emailed every woman who had reached out to me since this began. Rachel, another cousin, a friend of a friend, even 2 strangers who found me through Tasha. I invited them to dinner, not to vent, not to trauma dump, to celebrate, to recognize each other, to remind ourselves we weren't crazy for saying this isn't okay. 7 of us sat around my dining table that Saturday night. All from different walks of life, all betrayed in different ways. but all done being silent. We laughed, cried a little, shared stories of courage, shame, anger, and survival. That night, we toasted not just to healing, but to warning every woman who came after us. Trust your instincts. Document everything. Protect your peace. The next morning, I found a handwritten note tucked in my jacket pocket. It was from Rachel. She wrote, "Thank you for breaking first. It made it easier for the rest of us to stand." I didn't reply. I just folded the note and placed it inside a locked wooden box beside my bed, next to my journal, my deed, my new will, and my peace. Weeks later, I was invited to speak on a local podcast, a segment called Financially Fearless: Women Who Fought Back. I agreed, anonymously at first, but as the date approached, I changed my mind. I told them to use my name, all of it, first and last, because if my story could help even one woman protect herself, it was worth sharing. And when the episode aired, the response was overwhelming. Hundreds of emails, dozens of comments, people saying, "This was my story too. I didn't even know I was being manipulated until now. You made me feel less alone." That's when I knew. The revenge wasn't the courtroom win. It wasn't even the land deal. It was reclaiming the narrative, turning betrayal into empowerment, and refusing to be a silent casualty of someone else's greed. So if you're watching this and you've ever felt trapped, pressured, gaslit, or taken advantage of, you are not alone. And you don't owe your silence to anyone. Not your brother, not your husband, not your past. You owe yourself the truth and the courage to act on it. I'd love to hear your story in the comments. And if this message resonated with you, please subscribe. There's another story coming tomorrow. And it just might be the one that sets you free.